Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be checking out All the Gods Are Dead, Act 2, a Warhammer 40k story for mature audiences only, of course, by a Vox in the Void. We checked out part 1 quite a bit ago now on the channel. I think it was about a month ago, maybe a bit longer now at this point, but God has it not stuck with me. It's pretty hard to forget that one. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like it's pretty hard to forget the brutality of it. Obviously the events unfolding, you know, heretic forces have obviously came to the world of Arvro, I believe it is, if I want to remember correctly. That might be wrong. I'm sure we'll find out here. And basically, this fella had to basically leave his old sick wife out to die, basically be mutilated in a sense. Rituals probably took place. I'm not sure what else took place. I'm sure we can all use our minds on that one. And basically, he hid under the floorboards. And when he came up, shit was fucked. There was a monster there. He basically slayed that monster, if you want to call it that, in an effort to save his own life. Obviously, he donned the mask of that monster, of that heretic force. Of that heretic, in an effort to save his own life. And I believe where it left off, it literally said like he's willing to do anything to see the sun rise once more. The story stuck with me pretty hard. It's a pretty gruesome story. That was a rough summarization. If you guys want to watch the full thing, of course, Vox on the Void has it on his channel. I have it on my channel. Go check it out, whichever you guys prefer. It's awesome to see, but do make sure you give Vox his due and go like his video at minimum, of course, because these fantastic narrations, but they are very, very dark shit. I'm not going to lie. Again, not for the faint of heart, but if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, of course, subscribe for more content from me, and leave your recommendations, of course, down in the comments below. Big shout out to all of our members, all of our Hastati, and our Principe Dagenhart. I appreciate you guys, sir. You guys inspire me to make more content for you guys every single day, of course, and you're currently my only source of income, as it's so happens. So yes, now without any further ado, let's get right into this, guys. I'm excited for this one. I am going to be writing stuff down for this video, as always. So yeah, guess we'll see what this one entails. I assume it's going to be as gruesome as the last, so let's get into it. Act 2, Legionaris.
Solomon caught glimpses of creatures he still had not been able to fathom. Arven's scorching sun broke through the canopy of the forest, casting dark, monstrous shadows on the thorny foliage as the thump of the march continued. He had spent 7 cruel days hidden in the company of the barbaric enemy. By the grace of the Emperor, he had always been positioned on the comparative safety of the flanks during their maraud through the woodland province of Jungsberg. He had remained inside the clandestine disguise of the armor and mask whilst being swept from one mass genocide to the next. For the last 2 days, he had marched alongside the rear guard battalion known to its followers as the Vessels of Bacchus. In this time, he had seen acts of pain and suffering inflicted on his kinsfolk unbelievable in nature.
Damn.
He had witnessed entire settlements sacked and raped by an army that only desired to soak in the pleasure of the world's misery. He had been.
So of course, what's kind of fucked here, of course, is the fact that it has been 7 days, you know, since he's donned that mask, and he's just been doing this. You know, at the end of it, his goal was to see a sunrise. Now, obviously, that means he wants to live, right? That's the direct meaning of that. But goddamn, like, I guess you can't really get away. You can't really make an exit. You know what I mean? Like, what can you really do besides go along with it at that point or fight? But like, goddamn, you know, I mean, you could, you know, you could turn your rifle on yourself, I suppose. I mean, that's a better alternative, I think, than putting up with this barbarity. Like, he's literally doing this to his own people. Like, but I guess, damn, let's see what happens here.
Believable in nature. He had witnessed entire settlements sacked and raped by an army that only desired to soak in the pleasure of the world's misery. He had been party to the desecration of the god Emperor and the missionary work of the ecclesiarchy when the Imperial Hospital of Twinsgate was razed to its foundations by a platoon of traitor tanks. It was impossible for Solomon to forget the sight of the child soldiers welded to the pintle-mounted guns on top of the vehicles, singing their own infantile lullabies of war with maniacal joy as they fired into the flaming building and the burning civilians within.
Goddamn.
He remembered how the captured preachers and Medicaid personnel of the hospital were relieved of their limbs and rolled down a nearby rocky cliff face by bored grunts who wagered on which of the screaming torsos would crack apart first. But nothing could prepare Solomon for the warp-spawned monsters that ripped their way into his world and bolstered the burgeoning ranks of the arch-enemy. There were giant, multi-limbed beasts that licked the air with serpentine tongues whilst they scuttled at the front of the advance, exuding a pheromone cloud that only intensified the hedonism.
And I imagine, too, like, this is probably, like, I'm not entirely certain, right? But if I had to imagine, I would think that this is probably a frontier world. This is probably a world, you know, again, with minor defense, as I think it's stated in the first, actually. I'm pretty sure they said minor. It wasn't really heavily defended. There wasn't really any fortresses or anything like that on the world. And I assume it's probably pretty far out there, and assuming, like, communications weren't cut also, right? You know, so I don't imagine help is probably going to come to this world. That's probably just my assumption, given, like, the nature of this. I assume no help is probably going to be coming. No space marines to come save the day. Nothing like that, unfortunately. I guess we'll see, but I doubt it.
Exuding a pheromone cloud that only intensified the hedonism. From dark, unspeakable rituals came the maidens of excess. Slender, intoxicating creatures that trilled their praises to Slanesh. Solomon found it impossible to ascertain their true form as dark powers cloaked them in shifting visions of beauty and revulsion. Corrupted guard soldiers would bade and leer at the androgynous demons, their lusting never quenched even when their appetites always ended with some part of their bodies being removed by the snapping clawed hands of the maidens.
Damn.
The abhorrent creature that ever followed behind Solomon was the same hysterical insect beast he had seen when the injured caravan had taken camp outside of his farmstead. A barbed lash was stitched into the chitinous shell of one of its stalked forearms, and the creature clearly enjoyed its role as taskmaster. The wounded and sick would feel the horrific bite of the whip every time they failed to keep step, or simply for its own twisted amusement. Solomon thanked the throne for the plundered flak armor that absorbed most of the insect's attacks. He also mouthed a silent prayer for the iron mask that protected his weeping, untainted face from being revealed. Solomon's world had become a bastardized form of sight through the narrow eye slits of the mask.
Yeah, that would be pretty fucked. Like, because I don't think, like, he's obviously not corrupted. Like, that's the fuck thing about all this, right? Is he's just kind of going along with it to live. But he himself is not corrupted, so it's kind of like, where does this end? Where does this facade end? You know what I mean? Like, it's rather fucked. And, like, again, at this point, like, even if his own side was to find him, like, you know, what's he gonna say that's gonna, like, you know, admit him from, like, anything that he's potentially done or been a part of at this point? You know, like, goddamn, it's a rough situation. This is, you know, this is pretty brutal.
Become a bastardized form of sight through the narrow eye slits of the mask. Peripheral vision was stripped away, and the damned weight of the iron made turning his head an unbearable task. He was forever staring forward, forever marching alongside the raiders that devastated the land he had called home for 50 Terran years.
Wow.
He likened the blinkered view of his world to the coin-operated pick viewers he used as a child on the Cardinal Sea promenade. It was a good way to distance himself from the surrounding madness. It was the only way. Vicious knots of vines that twined and wrapped around wide trees snagged on Solomon's ragged, filthy clothing, slicing into his skin as he attempted to push past. He slung the looted auto rifle he was holding, unsheathed his bill-hooked blade with his free hand, and began cutting a path through the dense forest, all the while hearing his looming insect handler chitter and threaten with its own swipes behind.
Goddamn.
The march continued until Arvum's burning sun had set over the sparse awning, the vibrant red sky of day melting into the brackish brown of dusk. Solomon dropped to his knees, suppressing a scream of agony, when his handler gave him one more lash for good measure across the back of his calves. Emitting a clicking vocalization, the creature skittered off towards the forward ranks, a stinking yellow trail oozing onto the forest floor from underneath its segmented carapace.
So this thing is just like straight up just like, you know, and I'm assuming like the average like heretic force would totally be into that type of shit, but like he's obviously not corrupted. I mean, maybe not. Maybe like pain is still pain to them. But like, you know, the fact that he's like, he screamed from that, you know, might be a little telling. Even in his voice, he might not even sound like corrupted, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. But there's definitely no way he could ever make an escape here. Again, he's got fucking beasts all around him. He's got other heretic forces all around him. There's, you know, if he tries to do anything, he's going to be fucking gadded instantly or eaten or worse. Definitely worse from what we've seen.
Stinking yellow trail oozing onto the forest floor from underneath its segmented carapace. Solomon sat back in the spot he fell. He felt the cold, damp moss soak through his clothes as he rubbed his cramping legs and tenderly pulled up the bottom of his trousers to inspect his latest wounds. The barbed whip had caused 3 deep cuts that traversed both legs, fresh, warm blood running into his boots. He gripped his calves and tried to stem the bleeding, watching the reddening of infection already setting in. Tearing 2 thin strips from his tunic, he wrapped them tightly around his thin legs before picking up his rusted auto rifle. Solomon had never had to fire a weapon in his life, for the life of a field teller on Arvum was as close to peace you could find in the galaxy.
Wow.
There would be the seasonal leech fly infestation in the animal holdings, or Maya rat swarm that would render a harvest unusable, but that was about the extent of their troubles. That was until the corruption of chaos arrived in system and tore that piece apart.
Yeah.
Feeling the
again,
rifle.
Yeah, like a completely out of the way place, doesn't really have problems, never really has had problems. So a perfect place for a heretic force to come up and raid, because it's unsuspecting. No one's going to be there to protect it. That's the problem, right? Yeah, totally a prime target for sure. And yeah, it's just unfortunate because, yeah, again, I think that just further adds to the fact that there is probably nothing coming to help them here or to liberate this planet.
Piece apart. Feeling the plasteel rifle heavy in his arms was nearly as alien to him as anything he had witnessed over the last week. The weapon had been thrust unceremoniously into his hands by a wizened old armorer when leaving the camp at the farm, along with 3 magazines of ammunition, a toothless grin, and a suspiciously slimy handshake. He brought the rifle up to his shoulder and imagined drumming a whole magazine into the insectoid beast. How the recoil would surge through his entire body.
Would that even kill it, though?
Good. Powerful. A warrior. He quickly dropped his aim when he heard the cracking of feet on underbrush and felt the presence of something standing next to him. With a great effort, Solomon turned and tilted his head upwards. A stunningly beautiful man dressed only in a golden weave robe stood over him, staring down with white blue eyes. He presented as a member of misplaced royalty in this sea of unwashed foot soldiers and monsters of the warp. The stranger held out a perfectly manicured hand and ushered him to stand with the grace and poise of high nobility, even inclining his head in a slight bow of respect when Solomon took his offer to rise. A strange, comforting sensation flowed through their touch.
Very odd.
Solomon was led slowly towards the main throng of soldiers and worshippers that had congregated inside a wide clearing of the forest.
Right.
Tiny, huffing familiars no larger than the canopy-dwelling marmosets above shouldered minuscule sacks and followed behind the beautiful man. The man stopped, released his hold on Solomon's clammy hand, and leisurely turned so they faced one another. The 2 men stood the same height, but there was an air of bravado that made the regal stranger appear much larger in stature.
Right.
A perfect straightness in his posture. A chiseled, well-coiffed head held high on a slender neck. The grandiose figure exhaled a breath and derobed slowly, all the while staring at Solomon with unblinking eyes that seemed pure white in the dull wash of the moonlight. He folded his golden robe with perfect practice technique, and passed it to a second group of familiars who squabbled and fought over who would carry the garment away. The naked man immediately began to maneuver Solomon's arms, head, and legs into a multitude of positions, never satisfied with the results as he cursed under his breath, pacing around him in a circle.
Interesting.
After an hour of relentless levering and posing, the stranger clicked his long fingers, and the sack-carrying familiars gathered around his feet, clucking as they climbed on each other like circus performers, making an organic ladder to their master's hand. First, an oval plate was passed upwards that the naked man took with his left hand. A small leather bag was next, which was placed onto the ceramic dish. The stranger untied the pouch and let the contents spill onto the indented plate. Paintbrushes. The small, bristled brushes of an artisan lay on the pallet. An impossibly old woman approached, a canvas and easel far too big for her misshapen frame tied across her back. The simian servant who stood at the top of the organic ladder screeched and grabbed at the...
So is this guy about to paint him? This is very odd. This is very, very strange what's happening here. I don't know who this fucking mysterious naked figure is who's apparently perfect looking. And when it was like, yo, he's getting put into different positions, I was like, what? But I don't think, I think Solomon is still very much like in his armor and stuff. I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking, cause like, if not, how would they fucking, is he just wearing the mask? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's some weird shit. So let's see where this goes.
The simian servant who stood at the top of the organic ladder screeched and grabbed at the air wildly when the artist plucked him from the group and tightened a squeeze around its midriff. A squirt of thick gore plopped onto the pallet as the artist milked the flailing animal. The painter tossed the emptied, lifeless beast to the ground, picked up a fine haired brush and began to swirl and blend the blood and juice, expectorating long strands of saliva into the pallet to loosen the mix.
Goddamn.
A group of doting underlings enclosed on Solomon, carefully adorning his armor and iron mask with long white bird feathers that adhered to his person with a putrid-smelling tar. He was made to stand motionless as the painter worked.
I see.
Every brushstroke upon the canvas was meticulous and executed.
So it's just this guy, so he's just painting him. Weird.
Shape and line with
very weird
artistry. Throughout the pained stillness, Solomon could hear a frenzy of commotion behind him. The infernal sounds of laughter that accompanied the march this far was now transforming into a full orchestration of pain. An orgy of death and incantations was happening mere meters from Solomon, yet still he faced forward for the artist to complete his work. Something fleshy and turgid rutted against his back, but it was quickly shooed away by one of the artist's retinue, the painter screaming in irritation at the interruption. A wind of aromatic incense overwhelmed Solomon's senses as the artist allowed the old crone to rub his body with oil. The man composed himself, waved the old lady away, and recommenced with his great work. A small group of onlookers had now gathered behind the canvas.
Interesting. It's almost as if fucking, it's almost as if like these chaos forces in a sense are vying for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, because he, even though this is weird, he's still being more respected than he was previously by his previous handler, I guess, that insect, you know, with a whip. And something was trying to like take him, something's behind him. And even the painter is frustrated at the interruption. I don't know if he's frustrated at Solomon or if he's frustrated at fucking whatever's going on behind him, trying to like grab him, take him. You know what I'm saying? So it seems like there's like a competition here in a sense. Between the chaos forces. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's an incorrect interpretation. But let's keep watching here.
A small group of onlookers had now gathered behind the canvas, hollering and gasping with open-mouthed awe to the methodical artist feverishly capturing every moment of the bacchanal. Emerald green sparks of light illuminated the dark woodland in flashing still-frame images, and the sudden heat of a blazing furnace seared into Solomon's back. Through the mask he saw the artist drop his palette and brush, his sheening body trembling in pure anticipation. The ancient woman by the artisan's side turned the canvas. It was a masterwork of misery, a beautifully rendered piece of art that Solomon damned himself for admiring.
Oh.
In the foreground stood the masked creature he had become, the likeness striking in its realism.
Wow.
His arms were held wide from the body, hands painted with the palms facing the stars. It reminded Solomon of the religious imagery that had always been prevalent across the world of Arvum.
I see.
From beautiful sketches of the god emperor that lined imperial cult texts and prayer books, to the stories of the long-dead gods of terror he heard whispers of when working in the fields. But this work held no warmth of the emperor's holy light, or an omnipotent deity's blessing. This was demonic blood art that shimmered and bubbled in the green firelight, dancing off the stretched canvas in the flickering glow. Bleak images of ritualistic sacrificial murder covered the remaining artwork. A tapestry of torture so intricate it was almost as Solomon was looking through a glass window and into the very madness of the warp itself.
I see.
Flocks of squawking birds exploded skyward from their nests as a sonorous rumble shook and bowed the trees to their roots. The earth trembled underneath Solomon, threatening to split open at his feet. More clashing colors bloomed around the thicket clearing, igniting the area in a myriad of brilliant purples, pinks, and green.
So this is what was happening behind him. I see. So all that shit he because he said he like heard rituals taking place, like fucking vile shit and like so much pain, right? Like, you know, with the warband, like, because he said like the laughter of the warband had turned into like utter pain, I believe. And it's just like describing like an apocalyptic fucking scene behind him, basically. And he's like the centerpiece, like praising it in a sense almost. Wow.
Igniting the area in a myriad of brilliant purples, pinks, and green. Satisfied the artist did not require his muse any longer, Solomon slowly turned on his heels and his heart stopped when he finally laid his eyes on the nightmare that was happening behind him. Under a colossal bonfire of cremated bodies, an army of zealots 100 deep knelt and kissed at the earth. The burnt remains seemed to writhe with life. Green flames roasted the skin from their bones, popping and crackling like cindered wood. More jerking movements from the mass of dead heretics, a fluctuating tidal surge of blackened limbs that reached and fell. The bodies were not alive. The monster that birthed from the bones and ash was.
I see.
Bursting from the crest of the bonfire, a greater demon of Slanesh roared its arrival. The horned abomination snapped its bovine jaws, its 4 limbs scything the air as it acclimated to its new material surroundings, and to the battalion of loud, worshipping soldiers who thrust their weapons into the air in salute. Unburning flames licked up clawed reptilian legs as the demon gracefully descended the mountain of corpses in long, sensual strides. As a payment to their dark god, slavering hedonists offered the gifts of flesh and death. Whimpering men and women of the ecclesiarch lay in a row, each one bound spread eagle to 4 metal stakes that had been hammered into the thick ashy dirt at the base of the bonfire. They screamed for mercy when the monster towered over them. They screamed for absolution to the whistle of bone flutes and the beat of primal drums. They just screamed when the creature skewered each one in turn from bowel to brain. Solomon dry heaved inside the mask. He feared the mere hint of repulsion would alert suspicion, but there wasn't enough food in his belly to vomit anyhow.
Very fucked. So they summoned a greater demon just like that. I shouldn't say just like that. I'm sure there's a lot involved. It sounds like it. They're literally talking about a fucking mountain of corpses and in a fire that birthed this thing. And they're sacrificing members of the ecclesiarchy as well to it. Yeah, very fucked. And I guess like the painter, like it was like, you know, to memorialize like this great happening in their mind, right? Like with what's going on. God, you know, this is pretty awful. And to think like he's part of that, and like he's the one that's painted in the foreground of it, in a sense, like, you know, that can't really ever be removed, you know, I'm sure. So it's like, oh fuck, what a rough story this is. Holy shit, guys.
A hint of repulsion would alert suspicion, but there wasn't enough food in his belly.
I'm liking it so far though. It's good. It's just like this is brutal. Wow.
immortalizing the arrival of the monstrosity that now feasted on a mess of gushing remnants that hung limply from its claws. The naked artisan took a step back to admire his finished magnum opus and bathe in the total adoration of his familiars, their squeals of delight the keenest, purest pleasure he could feel. He turned to face his audience, closed his perfect eyes, and embraced the rapturous applause.
Wow.
He died quick and messy, as whistling lasbolts tore through his lean ribs, igniting the scented oils that sheened across his body. The artisan's retinue watched in despair.
Wow. Lasbolts fucking rip through him. So I'm wondering if this is so this is clearly somebody's fighting them, fighting back at least. This might be a defense force. Maybe this is a planetary force that has come to save them, or not a planetary force, an interstellar force, like a fleet has come to the planet to try to relieve them. Maybe a distress call was sent out. I'm not too sure though. This is interesting. Again, I didn't expect like anything to be fighting back here. So let's see what happens. Wow.
That sheened across his body. The artisan's retinue watched in despair, wailing in collective lamentation when their master folded into the mud. A bright star burst from the treetops as a flare round detonated. A moment of stunned silence filled the entirety of the forest before a hail of coordinated las fire exploded from the outskirts of the clearing. Heavy ordnance zeroed the bonfire and cultists that continued praying to their dark god, disintegrating the ritual in a creeping firestorm. The gigantic four-armed demon screamed in bestial ecstasy as lasbolts and hard rounds winged it from all directions. Solomon dived into a shallow ravine, stumbling and rolling down the mud bank as shards of light zipped overhead in trained bursts of gunfire. This was no militia outfit, Solomon thought, as he held his auto-gun tight to his palpitating chest.
Goddamn.
This was the guard. Over the crack of las rifles and roar of returning counterfire, So guard have... So either there was like a guard regiment maybe stationed on the planet, perhaps, or maybe this is, again, a reinforcing force. I'm not sure which. I'm sure there has to be some guard on the planet. There must be, like, even if it's a small planet, I'm sure there has to be some contingent of guard there. Maybe not, but I'd think there would be some. Probably not in great numbers. So maybe this is just like the planetary guard force putting up a resistance at this point. That's also potentially possible. Over the crack of las rifles and roar of returning counterfire, a cyclic, clanking stomp drew near.
Is he gonna have to kill his own here? Let's see.
Emerging from the shadows like a gigantic jungle cat, with its autocannon spitting brutal death into the front ranks of the enemy. Heavy shells thumped into the dead artist's retinue as the sentinel raked the battlefield, turning the familiars inside out and the old woman into a bloody mist, her decapitated head rolling into the ravine to stop by Solomon's foot.
Goddamn.
Solomon had little time to duck as the androgynous maidens leapt over the ravine, moving at incredible speed to meet their attackers in bloody melee. The armored sentinel repositioned its firing arc and attempted to train its heavy weapon on the acrobatic demonettes that weaved and shimmered in the beam of the vehicle's searchlight. The autocannon fired, chewing up the forest floor and pulping surrounding trees, but having no effect on the trilling creatures that were nearly upon the armored vehicle. The water vented thick exhaust smoke as it backpedaled into the shadowy forest. Flamer troops pushed past to cover its retreat, hosing the screeching demonettes with burning promethium.
Nice.
Another flare burst turned night into day.
That's smart. Again, like I like it in Warhammer when they actually like use tactics like that, right? Like push your armor out, not too far, but just enough to be in range. Fucking light them up. Okay, shit, they're closing into range. Fall back a little bit, instantly screened with like a close range flamethrower troop to head on that melee, right? I like it when they use like tactics like that. And Vox does, again, man, Vox, I have to give him props. I'm just gonna say it now. This is his narration is fucking fantastic, especially for these more horror orientated stories. He's got such a perfect voice for it, man. Like he does a great job with it. Wow.
With burning promethium.
This action's awesome.
Another flare burst turned night into day. Twisting rockets screamed over Solomon's head towards a squad of traitors attempting to assemble a bipod-mounted heavy weapon. The warheads detonated on target and turned the forest floor into a quagmire of slush and blood.
Jeez.
A spirited war cry from hundreds of lasmen echoed throughout the forest when they charged from the darkness, their barking commissars ordering them all to fight to the last man. Ferocious gunfire cut the first rank of charging guard to pieces. The second rank filed into the clearing and vaulted their dead and dying comrades, snapping off rounds and lobbing grenades. Hooded, heretical thralls rushed to meet them in open combat, madly swinging scimitar blades and discharging their antique lead throwers. They proved no match for the proficiency and firepower of the guard in close combat.
Damn.
The pheromone-emitting chimeric monsters fared better. A band of the horrors flanked from the west of the Imperial charge, cutting and disemboweling their human enemies with ease. Noxious, hypnotic clouds swirling behind. The handful of soldiers not dead or desperately holding their organs inside their bodies shuffled in all directions, entranced by the mirages of pleasure fabricated within the wake of the terrors. The intoxicated troopers died with stupid, drunken smiles across their faces when traitor infantry closed the distance and ran them through with crude bayonets.
That's fucked.
Blaring Imperial battle hymns from its distorted vox speakers, the armored sentinel smashed into the fray once more, the rhythmic crump of the autocannon matching the timing of its heavy pneumatic steps.
I just want to say that's awesome. Like, literally through the Vox, all it is battle hymns fucking going off. You know what I mean? No organization, just fucking like trying to inspire the men. It sounds like they're getting ripped apart here, though. It definitely doesn't sound like a large force at all. Yeah, an ambush tactic. That was a great ambush. But the fact that they're charging afterwards, that's rough. You're not going to win in a long engagement like that, especially if you don't have the numbers. If this is a small contingent, yeah, they had to shoot like they did, fucking kill as many as you can and bum it out of there as fast as you can, right? Like, and then you have to keep doing that. Like, you gotta guerrilla tactic the fuck out of them, especially if it's a much larger force. And it looks like, you know, they're committing here, and it's looking rough.
The rhythmic crump of the autocannon matching the timing of its heavy pneumatic steps. A platoon of traitor guards welcomed the pain of death with gleeful open arms, laughing and pleasuring themselves as limbs and chunks of meat ripped from their bodies. Solomon cowered and tucked his quaking body into the long reeds that lined the ravine. Thumping blood pounded in his ears. He struggled to catch his breath, suffocating panic gripping his heart and lungs. A frag grenade impacted nearby that left him deaf in the moment. He felt choked by fear now, like invisible fingers around his throat that were never going to let go. He needed to be free of the damned mask. He unbuckled the straps and let the iron visor thud to the ground with a gasping breath. The ringing in his ears faded, and it was shocking how much being enclosed in the mask had hidden from Solomon. Not only in vision, but sound also. He cut his ears as sibilant bolts fizzed from every direction, smacking into thick trees and showering him with las-heated bark. Solomon lifted his head above the reed line and risked a brief view of the battle.
Yeah.
In a descending flare
Fuck
light,
that.
a grizzled commissar launched himself into a group of heretics with a bellowed prayer and a chainsword biting. Their armor no more than wet paper to the revving teeth of the weapon. Flanking the commissar were ochre, poncho-clad troopers that called out targets, cheering as they scored kills with every volley from their shouldered rifles. Okay. The guard was winning this fight.
Really?
Solomon wanted to stand and surrender.
Really? The guard is winning this fight. Interesting. I assume their ranks were getting cut down. Maybe there was less heretic forces at this point than I assumed. Or at this position than I assumed. It sounded pretty bad just by like the description of the ritual. It sounded like there would be a lot more of them. Maybe I don't, you know. And again, it was an ambush, so most of those guys were fucking cut down instantly, especially with that sentinel there as well. Like you're fucking annihilating large swaths of the enemy. Your AoE is fucking crazy, I'm assuming, right? You know, especially with that full auto cannon that they fucking had there, you know. If you're just letting that loose into a fucking crowd, and, you know, I imagine that would be brutal. So maybe they are winning here, and it sounds like, again, a commissar. Obviously, they'd have a commissar, but also elite troops surrounding that commissar, and they're cheering. It sounds like, you know, and I think the Sentinel's still up. It hasn't described the Sentinel being killed, which is still fucking a massive problem for them, or for the heretic forces, I should say. And as long as that's alive, you know, the battle could still definitely be lost for them. So, you know, it being alive. I see them, yeah, potentially actually winning, especially if it describes it as such. I just don't know how he's going to get out of this one.
The guard was winning this fight. Solomon wanted to stand and surrender, but his legs were jellied and useless. He wanted to shout for salvation, but his tongue was swollen. He wanted to crawl out of the ravine, but a hard, steel-capped kick to his ribs sent him spiraling back into the shallow stream. The assailant jumped into the water and lunged at Solomon with a punch knife wedged between his fingers. Solomon pivoted onto his back, raised the water-clogged autogun from his side, and pulled the trigger. The soldier wavered for a second, hacked a spray of blood, and fell face first into the stream, his militarum fatigue stained red from the giant exit wound in his spine.
Damn.
His first true kill. A soldier of the Imperium. On the urgent Vox-Halid orders of the Commissariat, a focused swarm of shells, bolts, and rockets traced across the clearing. The greater demon had been waiting with a patience at odds with its monstrous form, savoring the furious violence of battle from the rear. Now, its anticipation sated, the giant monster barreled into the fighting lines of the Imperial
this
Guard
demon
with a devastating speed and ferocity that was almost impossible to follow.
Yeah, this demon hasn't even entered the fray yet, I imagine. So once it does, it's going to probably turn the tide pretty heavily. Like, I don't think the guard alone is going to be able to stand to a fucking, a demon like this, you know, summoned in the manner it was. I don't see it happening, guys. I'll be real with you.
The Imperial Guard with a devastating speed and ferocity.
And sorry, no, the fact that he had to kill an Imperium guard and a guard as well, like, he kind of had to. He did attack him outright, so it was kind of like him or, you know, me or him kind of deal. But like, yeah, fuck, brutal that he had to do that. I imagine if the guard would win, this guy would just don that guy's uniform, much like he donned the heretic's uniform, you know? I imagine that would be largely what it is. He just keeps switching sides, depending on the situation.
Giant monster barreled into the fighting lines of the Imperial Guard with a devastating speed and ferocity that was almost impossible to follow. The tide of war turned in a minute of whirling savagery.
Wow.
Battle-hardened veterans of countless heroic campaigns were chewed to mushy sludge in a heartbeat. Desperation spread like a quick-acting nerve gas across the field. Soldiers of the Imperium, their minds full with fear and hopelessness, broke from cover and began to flee from the battle. They turned on each other with fists and blade as morale snapped like brittle bones. Officers fighting like animals to keep control of their routing squads.
Wow.
Retreating guardsmen dropped everywhere, executed by enemy fire or by their own superiors for cowardice.
Wow.
Solomon saw the sentinel at the tree line rock under the...
And you see where, like, the idea of, like, no retreat comes, like, you know, it totally fucks the guard over at times, right? Like, especially when a battle starts to look unwinnable, you need to know when a tactical retreat is the best option. And when you have commissars on the field and when you have officers on the field like that and the order is given no retreat, like, we're going to push through this, you're going to fight or you're going to die, you know, and morale is wavering like that, like, because even if your men run your route, you could always maybe reform later, right? Like, and again, a tactical retreat in that sense, maybe morale is less, but it won't be completely fucking shattered like it is now that you're killing your own people. You know what I mean? I feel like the second you start killing your own people, especially in a situation like this for the guard, yeah, it's over. You know what I mean? Like, you've lost. Like, yeah, you can't be killing your own when you got to deal with this, you know what I'm saying? It's bad.
Cowardice. Solomon saw the sentinel at the tree line rock under the weight of the demons that scaled its frame.
Wow.
The crewman
there goes the sentinel.
Loose,
yeah.
Frantically swiveling the machine and strafing with panicked, clumsy movements that only crushed and maimed his fellow guardsmen underfoot. The walker detonated in a superheated ball of white flame when the climbing monsters sliced into the vehicle's ammunition housing. Huge secondary explosions ruptured through the reserve troops when the wrecked Sentinel's rocket pods cooked off in the inferno.
Wow.
The commissars had gotten
That's cool detail too.
The guard had fought to the last man.
Yeah.
Solomon watched the greater demon hoist the lone survivor into the air with ease. Tendons stretched and snapped when the creature slowly tore his chain blade wielding arm from its socket, relishing in the human's agony and dangling him like a wooden toy. before smashing the screaming man on a rock like an egg. The battle was over, and Solomon was alive. Hundreds of corpses, both human and heretic, carpeted the glade, yet he drew breath.
Wow.
The husks of dead demons sparked and returned to the immaterium in flashes of pink and orange flame. But Solomon remained. He knelt and drank from the stream like a dog, unperturbed by the dead soldier's blood that flowed within the current of the water and tainted his mouth with a coppery aftertaste.
Damn.
A familiar, chittering noise was quickly nearing, a sound of vile insect legs weaving through the leafy underbrush.
What?
Solomon scrambled to find the iron mask.
Is this motherfucking... This insect is fucking really vendetta, you know, for him. He knows he's alive. He's fucking coming for him. No, but like, I assume he would be there. And like, obviously he broke apart from like the regiment, if you want to call it that, the band, if you want to call it that, that he was originally a part of, to be, you know, the center of that art piece. So yeah, it would make sense that like now supporting heretic forces are coming up to reinforce that position, and just so happens that would also be his former taskmaster, if you want to call him that. I think that was his words.
Solomon scrambled to find the iron mask, sweeping clumps of reeds and tall grass aside to the encroaching sound of a whipping lash. A metal, cherubic face smiled up from the sodden mud bank. Solomon returned the smile. The vessel of Bacchus's number had been decimated by the night raid, but it did little to slow their march through the wild woods the following day. Solomon's insect handler, now fat from its morning feed, lethargically spurred his charges forward with half-hearted threats burping from its sphincter mouth. How Solomon longed to put a bullet into that disgusting beast. Watch it squirm as its life pissed from the hole. Not yet, he thought to himself. Wait. He understood what it was like now, to feel a weapon buck in his hands and make something die. Too bad it had to be the Imperial soldier who took his murderer's virginity, and not this foul spawn of the warp. Solomon caught himself smiling under the mask as he remembered the rearward force of the rifle. It felt good. Powerful. He had survived another night, and this gave him hope, even when the battalion arrived at the edge of the wood and thrust into the bloody siege of Arvum's capital city.
Wow. So is that where it ends? Yeah, wow, guys. That was All the Gods Are Dead, Act 2 by A Vox in the Void. That was fantastic. I know there's Act 3, and I'm assuming that, like, yeah, they're approaching the capital city. They're gonna siege the capital city down. I guess thus far, they've just been marauding the countryside, I guess, in a sense. But a prolonged siege has not been enacted. At least, like, that band has not been a part of it. But it looks like the heretic forces are coalescing now that they've spawned these greater demons and what have you. And they're going to start besieging potentially walled cities, right? So that's going to be brutal, I imagine. And guys, if you want to see part 3, holy shit, leave a like on this video because I would like to check this out. I know it's been a while since we checked out the first part, but I really want to come back to this. I thought it was a fucking really, really great series, and I just wanted to see more of it. So yes, guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe for more content from me, and of course, leave your recommendations down in the comments below. Big shout out to all of our members, all of our Hastati, and our Principe Dagenhart. I appreciate you, sir. You guys inspire me to make more content for you guys every single day, of course. Come on down, join our Discord. Yeah, it's awesome to see you guys there. And if you have yourself a YouTube membership, got a gifted membership perhaps, then come on down, join the Discord, guys, and claim your membership. All you have to do is link your YouTube to your Discord, and you will get your membership role, of course, guys. But with that, this has been Centurion, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.